evening, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, December 2nd. We're excited. It is Wine Wednesday. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events, and welcome to Virtual Day Trip to Wine Country, presented by Citi. Today, we're going back to Sonoma County. We're actually going to Healdsburg, California, which is in the heart of Sonoma County. We're going to the Alexander Valley AVA, which has an abundance of amazing wineries, one of which we are going to be visiting with in living color this evening. The Alexander Valley AVA, American Viticultural Area, is what AVA stands for, is known for a few things that help it make great wine: great soil, great water, great weather. And we are heading to a great winery, Alexander Valley Vineyards. Alexander Valley's calling card is that it's got wines of distinction for pretty much every palate. They represent the AVA in an amazing way, and they really reflect the Alexander Valley, the DNA of the AVA in the area. And also, this is a great thing, especially in a world where we have so many huge brands and big companies. Alexander Valley Vineyards is still family owned. Its third generation is working in the winery every day. And they are all about agriculture as well as winemaking. So sustainability and agriculture, that's an amazing thing. And in today's world, there are a lot of us out there that care about that deeply. If you want to learn more about Alexander Valley Vineyards, you can visit avvwine.com. I'm going to put up in my background that URL. And also, I have a bit of a deal alert. There's a couple of amazing deals tonight on wines from Alexander Valley Vineyards. The first one is, and we'll talk about more of them later, but one of the primary ones is to get a sampler pack of the 4 wines that we're profiling with the promo code NYWE, New York Wine Events, for $43 plus flat rate shipping of only $5, which is an amazing deal. And when you taste these wines, you will be blown away. So check it out. These are half bottles. And that's a sampler pack. And that is the URL in my background there that you see behind me. So welcome. We're so excited that you guys joined us. And we're looking forward to a great tasting. Please feel free to ask any questions you have while we're doing the tasting and visiting with the folks from Alexander Valley Vineyards. You can do that in the chat or hit the Q&A button tab in Zoom on your screen, at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will answer as many of those questions in real time on the fly as possible throughout the session. And also, hey guys, hit us up in the chat right now if you would, and let us know where you are tuning in from. We get lots of people from around the country, and it's awesome for us to see where you're coming from and logging in from. And so it's really my pleasure today and this evening to welcome our guests and to host Katie Murphy, the owner, partner, and brand ambassador of Alexander Valley Vineyards, and Penny Haas, the Northeast Regional Sales Manager. Welcome, Katie and Penny. It is so cool and great having you on the show tonight.
Thanks so much. We're both happy to be here, I think, from California. And Penny's looks like she's in California, but she's actually in Maryland. So
very nice. You guys are bi-coastal. I think this is our first bi-coastal day trip to wine country on our virtual show all year long, where one guest speaker is on the West Coast and one is on the East Coast. So that's pretty cool.
Well, Penny's our Northeast salesperson and marketing director, and helps get me organized for all these tastings that I've been doing virtually. Does a great job.
And now, Katie, you as an owner and part of the generational family that owns and runs Alexander Valley Vineyards. You're second generation, right?
Correct. My parents bought the property in 1962, started planting grapes. We started the winery in 1975, and we're still family owned and family run.
That is so cool. You know, we get to talk to lots of interesting people when we do these shows. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, occasionally we get that person on there who made a pile of money in finance and bought a vineyard in California or Oregon or wherever it is. And it's really nice. And we've had this before where it's family owned and it's multi-generational and there's no Johnny come lately aspect to the ownership and management of the winery.
Definitely not. It takes you, in a place like Healdsburg, actually, it takes a long time to feel like you're not a newcomer anymore, but we're not newcomers anymore.
Well, and by the way, I will tell everybody who's tuned in watching with us, if you get the chance to try these wines, you will see that they are not newcomers. I mean, these are handcrafted and beautiful wines. So I know you've got some stuff that you're going to show us. It's some really cool and interesting information about the winery and the history. But I have one question that I am just bursting to ask you, and that is, in learning about the winery, I found out about the caves you have. So tell us about the underground caves.
Well, caves, naturally dug caves, are a great way to store barrels. We make mostly red wine. All that wine goes into barrels. And all those barrels have to be stored somewhere. That's a very nice picture there. And we have dug caves 3 different times. We started in 1997, again in 2000, again in 2008. We have underground, which you cannot see, 25,000 square feet of caves. You can see them on our tour, but they're not in a building that's visible. They hold about 8,000 barrels, perfect atmosphere for aging barrels, relatively high humidity, constant temperature. And we're actually getting ready in early next year to dig more caves in the hills behind us. We have great hillside areas that behave very well when digging a cave, virgin dirt and virgin earth.
So now I've just shared my screen with everybody. We're in one of your underground caves when you're looking at this picture, yeah?
Correct.
That is so cool. I mean,
they're all the barrels. We have French oak barrels, American oak barrels. They're all on pallets. They can be moved around and in and out. They can be stacked 4 high, as you see here. It's a great atmosphere. When we're able to do tours, we do comparative tastings of French versus American oak. So it's a great, we're very blessed to be able to have these caves. Lots of positive aspects to having caves.
I mean, it's just so cool. I mean, what percentage of wineries in Sonoma or Alexander Valley have the extensive caves that you guys have?
I don't know how many. I can think of probably 15 wineries, 20 wineries that have real actual caves.
But that's out of a few hundred in the
out of 1,000 in Sonoma. Right.
Sonoma,
I mean,
yeah, right.
There's probably more than that than I can think of, but they are quite an undertaking. They take a lot of forethought and planning. You have to have the right kind of place to do it. But there are a number of wineries that have caves. Ours are pretty large compared to most wineries.
Right. Well, so I just wanted, and I won't bore everybody with this. I just was having my Bob the Builder moment of like you guys excavating in these deep underground caves, and I think it's just very cool, and it's a distinct aspect of Alexander Valley.
Yeah, it's a very distinct aspect, and there are builders now who specialize just in building caves. The biggest issue with building a cave is where you put all that dirt that you take out of it. And that involves a whole other set of projects, which I won't go into, but they are ideal conditions for storing barrels of wine.
That is so cool. Well, on that note, I would love it if you would share your screen and walk us through a little bit of the background and the history of the winery and some of the key information that we want people to take away tonight. We've got people watching who are familiar with your winery, and we've got a lot of people who may have heard of it but aren't familiar specifically with Alexander Valley.
Great. Okay. Well, we're gonna walk through some pictures. I'm gonna talk a little, and we have 4 wines to taste along the way. And I'll stop sharing when we're tasting them, and you'll see me sipping and smelling and talking about the wine. So you can see my screen?
Indeed.
Okay, great. So we are Alexander Valley Vineyards, northern Sonoma County. This is what our valley looks like. It's picturesque and beautiful. We are open to the public every day. Right now, we are only open by appointment due to restrictions. The terrible unpleasantness we're all in, but we are still open, and we do
that means you have to make a reservation, right?
You have to make a reservation, and we can't do walk-in tastings, but we do still have tasting. No tours right now, but we do still have tastings.
Awesome.
Cyrus Alexander settled the valley in the 1840s. He was the first settler here to help settle the Sotiomi land grant for Captain Henry Fitch, who owned that land grant. And he was given about 5,000 acres of land. He had farms, cattle, crops. He did not have a winery or grow grapes, but built several historic buildings on the property that are still there. These beautiful rolling hills and the fog and the trees you see there. It's still very similar looking. The hills are very similar looking today.
And this was just before the gold rush, yeah?
This was just before the gold rush. He made a lot of his wealth after the gold rush started by selling produce and selling livestock to people who came to California and needed supplies and needed food. And then eventually selling off pieces of his land to people who stayed after the gold rush and wanted to live in California. He was a friend of John Sutter, and gold was discovered at Sutter's Fort. Excuse me. So he was a friend of John Sutter. He was a friend of General Vallejo and his family. And so yeah, knew a lot of people in the area. We still have 3 buildings on the property that he built, a home his family built, an old adobe building, the first original building he built, and a schoolhouse that he built in 1868. And the Alexander family cemetery is on the hill up overlooking the winery. So it's a very historic site, which is why we chose to use the name Alexander Valley Vineyards. This is the way the valley looked in 1905. Mostly grasslands, not much in the way of either grapes or fruit trees, which is what most of it was planted to when my parents bought the property in 1962. My parents had friends who had a house up in Alexander Valley. We'd come to visit them, and the Alexander family property came up for sale in 1962, and they bought it together, set out restoring the buildings, restoring the property, the rock walls, the trees, the gardens, and then started planting grapes in about 1964 or 1965. So it had not had grapes on it, and there were not a lot of grapes grown in the Alexander Valley at that time. A little bit, but mostly pears and prunes and apples and walnuts.
And when they bought it, had they been in the industry, or were they starting off as newbies?
They were starting off as newbies. Our friend who had a house in Alexander Valley had a few grapes, but both that family, the Green family, and my parents lived in Southern California. My father worked for an aerospace company and took a leap of faith and decided to go in with his friend to buy this property. We've added to the property several times. We've bought adjacent properties through the years, but they bought the original property together.
And again, how many acres is it all told now?
Right now, it's about 700 acres and about 320, 30 of that is in grapes.
And that means you, on an annual basis, you produce how many cases of wine?
We produce about 200,000 cases of wine a year.
Wow. Very cool.
Almost all estate grown and bottled. We buy a few grapes from Dry Creek Valley, and our Gewürztraminer comes from Mendocino County. So they're outside of our appellation, so they cannot be estate bottled. Right. They can't be labeled estate. They're bottled on the, everything's bottled on the estate. It's a very confusing terminology.
Right. Well, and for anybody watching who isn't familiar with that term estate, it's when the wine comes from grapes that are grown at the property, harvested, crushed, fermented, bottled, labeled, corked, the whole 9 yards right there on the property.
The biggest part of it is meant to indicate that the wine was not bought in bulk and brought from somewhere else. It was crushed there, stayed there, and was bottled there. So that's really what estate bottled means. This is a map of where Alexander Valley is and a map of Sonoma County. We're about 70 miles north of San Francisco. We're about 30 miles from the coast as the crow flies. We get nice cooling breezes that come in from the coast, as well as fog, but it warms up very nicely during the day. So we get warm days and cool nights, and that's perfect for ripening our fruit. Not a very humid area. We're a pretty dry area. Most of our rainfall happens between beginning of November and March or April.
Now, do you get a lot of that fog coming in off the ocean?
We get fog coming in. It comes up through the Russian River Valley, where the Russian River comes in, and the Russian River flows through Alexander Valley. So we get fog that comes up through there and through the hills. And I've got a few pictures of that a little bit later on.
Awesome.
The winery, of course, is named Alexander Valley Vineyards because Cyrus Alexander settled there. It can be a little confusing that our name is the same as the appellation, but we're very proud to represent what fruit and grapes and wine from the Alexander Valley can taste like. Over 720 acres. These are examples of some of our vines in the winter. Looks like this has not been pruned yet. But you can see how these are all trellised, and there are cover crops growing between the rows to help with both erosion and nutrition for the grapes.
Now, really quickly, when you talk about trellised in the vineyard, explain that.
Well, they're on stakes and they're all in a straight line. We can, that makes it easy to pick. It makes us able to pick with either by hand or by machine. And they're trained on these poles, as you can see, and on the wires in between. There's also drip irrigation underneath all of these rows, at the bottom of the row, not underground, but at the bottom of the row. So we can irrigate the vineyards in the summer when it's hot and dry here.
Very cool.
We have warm days, cool nights, as we said. Nice. There you get some of that fog that comes in the morning from the Russian River, which is, again, runs right through the property. So our coolest vineyards are down by the river. Warmest vineyards are up on the hillsides. And this is a picture of lovely Chardonnay grapes. These look like they're just about ripe. And that's my cue to stop sharing and for us all to taste our 2018 Chardonnay, which I'll do right now.
I am doing the same.
Okay.
Now this is barrel aged, yeah?
Yes, this is barrel aged. This is 70% fermented in stainless steel. Having a few problems there. This is 70% fermented in stainless steel tanks, 30% fermented in French oak barrels. That 30% stays in barrel for 6 months and goes through malolactic fermentation and is then blended with the stainless steel Chardonnay. So that stainless steel keeps the fruit very bright, but you get a little bit of oak in the flavor and in the finish, and that helps to round it out also.
It has a really nice balance. You get, as you just pointed out, you get some of the benefits that are so sought after these days in, you know, stainless steel fermented Chardonnays, but you also get that body and a tremendous burst of flavor and a little bit of that vanilla tasting note from the oak.
Right.
Real nice balance between the two fermentations. Yeah.
Right. You get the apples and pears in the aroma. You get a little bit of the vanilla. A stainless steel fermentation is easier to control the temperature because the tanks all are temperature controlled. A barrel fermentation, the control is in the temperature of the room rather than you can't chill a barrel. You can't jack it and chill a barrel very easily. So they're very different in the style of wine that they give you, but the blending of those two things together makes the nice balance that we get in this wine. Delicious.
What's the wine, this Chardonnay, what's your quintessential meal or food to pair this with?
Quintessential would be, well, if it's a really special occasion, I like it something like scallops that are grilled. I make chicken with mustard lemon cream sauce for my kids all the time. This is very nice for them. Any kind of fish, that nice acid balance just sets it up to be very nice with a lot of different foods. Balance is kind of the key word I like to use for everything we do. We're looking for a balance of the alcohol, the fruit, the acid, the oak. And I think in all these wines, you get that. I would definitely send you to our website for more food recommendations. avvwine.com. We have a lot of food recipes, recommendations, pictures, and some of the recipes we've done, some we've had other chefs do. So I definitely say take a look there for that. And I'm going to ask Penny to answer any questions we might have because I'm going to move on.
And my quintessential pairing is lobster.
Lobster, yeah, I think this is great with lobster. I was actually, call me crazy, but you know, I'm the amateur of the three of us here. I'm a wine enthusiast. You know, not very bright, but very interested. When it comes to this one, I feel like a really nice, like mozzarella basil tomato, or a mozzarella di bufala, like a rich, creamier one, to go with this, because it balances nicely, you know, in terms of the weight of the Chardonnay with that. But I think with a Penny with a lobster roll, oh my God.
Oh yeah, that's the beauty of the Chardonnay, is it's got such great balance. It can pair with so many things.
Okay, sorry, Dungeness crab. I'm sorry. We don't
have the East Coast, West Coast.
Yes, yeah, we got lobsters over here. You got crabs over there. It's all good.
But I do think that nice acid balance, you're right. Anything creamy, it stands up to it, yes, and it keeps it from being overwhelming.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it's delicious, and I'm a sucker for barrel-aged Chardonnay. You know, stainless steel is all the rage. Stainless steel fermented Chardonnay and white wines, but a good barrel-aged Chardonnay is, in my book, still a great thing. And I love the balance between the two processes, the two fermentations in this.
Well, I think there's been a lot of. Go ahead, Penny. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the critical point with this one is it's the minimal barrel aging is French oak as opposed to an American oak.
French oak makes a difference because it's very subtle. I think a Chardonnay has gone through a lot of iterations. This is a style we've made since 1975. The overuse of malolactic fermentation, which is a secondary fermentation, which turns malic acid, like in apples, into lactic acid, like in butter or milk or cheese. The overuse of that has made some Chardonnays too flabby and too buttery, actually. So you have to have those things balanced.
Yep.
And that balance works very well in this particular wine.
Well, we have some awesome pairing teams out there tonight. Norman is pairing this one right now. He's got the Chardonnay in hand and is pairing it with a creamy brie cheese. Awesome choice. By the way, I don't know if you guys have discovered it, but I discovered last week, maybe I'm late to the party, the spreadable brie cheese, which there's a couple of these companies out of there's some based in the US and there's one or two in France that make, it's literally, it's delicious. It's amazing. So I could see that. Nancy's recommends chicken française. And Scott says great with a creamy blue cheese.
Yeah, you're making me hungry.
You're making me hungry too.
It's only 4:30 here. You're making me hungry. Okay. So to move on, this is a photo of harvesting at night. When it's harvest time, we harvest in the morning, we harvest at night to make the most efficient use of the cool weather at night and the most efficient use of our crushing equipment and our fermentation tanks and our press. But you can see here the trellising we talked about earlier helps to be able to get to those grapes on the vine and not have to bend way down to have access to the fruit.
So now you guys hand harvest in that picture. They're hand harvesting as opposed to the machine that goes down and vibrates the grapes into a basket.
In this picture, they're hand harvesting, but we do both.
Yep.
We do both hand harvest. We do about 50-50.
Got
it. We are certified California Sustainable, Green California Business Network, and Sonoma County Sustainably Farmed Grapes. Sonoma County Sustainably Farmed Grapes are, again, probably 90 to 95% of our grapes, and we're moving towards 100%. It's not easy to achieve, something you have to apply for and keep up and do a lot of work for. It's not just about grape growing practices, but about how you run your business and your labor practices and your recycling and your solar and your water use and a whole lot of other things. But this is something we really take very seriously. The California Green Business Network, we're one of 11 certified wineries. So that's something we really work on. We put this in why sustainable for the next generation. This is next generation of nieces and nephews and grandkids. And I think this was an Easter egg hunt day. But we have lots of family members of the younger generation as well.
That would be the fourth generation, yeah?
Yes, that's right. My two nephews do most of the day-to-day operations of the winery. They're third generation, so that would be the fourth generation. This is a picture of cover crops in our vineyards. We plant cover crops between the rows, but the mustard comes up by itself, but does a very good job of putting nutrients in the soil, and then it gets mowed in the spring or disked back into the ground. We have solar array on our winery, and we're adding new solar array on our hills right now to use all over the ranch for most of our power needs.
How much of your power is solar versus off the grid?
Well, for the winery, it's almost half. Now it's about 40%. We've just installed more for the houses and other buildings on the ranch. So it's relatively small right now, but we're definitely moving in that direction.
Norman asked, do you also use wind power?
We do not use wind power right now. No.
Got it.
This is
What kinds of grapes are these?
These are Zinfandel grapes. We started taking sugar sample levels in August as things start ripening to check on the ripeness day by day. And this is just, you walk through the vineyard, you take a few grapes off of a few bunches, and then take them back to the winery and test for sugar.
Very cool. Those are beautiful, like deep purple.
Zinfandels are very big grapes, and I'm getting you ready for tasting the Zinfandel if you all want to grab that one.
That's the next bottle is the Zinfandel. Yeah, this one.
Yes, the Sinzin.
Sinzin. Okay.
Harvest began August 21st this year and ended October 15th. Relatively early, relatively fast, and not as big as the last 2 years, but not a small harvest by any means. This is grapes being dumped into the crusher as they're brought into the winery.
Very cool.
Sometimes we'll ferment Zinfandel in small 1-ton bins, and those have to be punched down by hand 3 or 4 times a day to distribute the juice around the skins, because all the color comes from the skins.
Now what is that? What's that implement that your employee has there? Like the punch down. When you say punch down, what's the process? And
well, in a stainless steel tank, if you're fermenting, the cap of skins floats to the top, and 3 or 4 times a day you pump the fermenting wine from the bottom of the tank over the cap and the top to extract color. All the color comes from the skins. In this small bin, we like to do these small bins because you get more skin contact for the amount of juice, and it helps bring out more lively fruit flavors. So it's kind of like a big plunger with a flat thing on the bottom, and you just push it in and push the skins up and down.
Very cool. And are those bins, or unlike a tank, they don't have refrigeration in their skin or in the actual structure of the bin, right?
They do not. So you can see they're in the cave.
So it's already cold down there.
And it has, as you see on the left, it has a lid. So the lid will go back on it when he's done punching it down.
We have a Zin fan, Katie. Jeffrey Price is a Zin fan.
It does produce carbon dioxide, so you cover it, and you have to use fans in the cave when you have any fermentation going on in there.
Katie, one of the questions we have is about why we chose the different label image for Sinzin, and I think you're the perfect person to answer that.
Looks like a sinful image on here.
Well, on the image you see the first one, the older one on my left. That was a wine we made as a homemade wine in 1978. We were selling our Zinfandel to another winery. We weren't making it ourselves. We had some extras in. We decided, let's make a barrel of Zinfandel that we'll just keep for ourselves, see how it does, see if we like it. And our assistant winemaker at the time brought in an art history book with a picture of a German etching, which is that etching that's in the middle. And he said, we could use this for the label. And I was like, okay, then we got to call it Sinzin. It just popped in my head. I was like, hey, you look at that picture, it says Sinzin all over. So
it does.
That year we just made homemade wine. We started in 1980 making it commercially. We've changed the label over the years. We're back to the black and white on the half bottle that you have, but we've kept the central image the same through the years. The red one we did fun kind of as a lark, but it's still very recognizable. Not everybody knows that we make Sinzin because it says AVV Winery on the back, but it's not very
Right. It's
recognizable.
not prominently labeled. So a couple quick questions because we like to do these on the fly, Katie. What is the temperature in the cave?
The temperature in the cave year round is about 58 to 60 degrees. It feels a little warmer because it's humid because you're underground.
Yep.
But it's generally static at about 58 to 60. That means that you have less evaporation out of the barrel. So you lose less wine in a cave than you would in an air-conditioned building.
Right. It's totally natural. Jerry has a question. Is the push down thing instead of stomping the grapes? I'll let you answer that.
No, the push down thing is not instead of stomping the grapes. The grapes, when they're brought in, go through a destemmer that takes the stems off and breaks open the skins, which would be the same as stomping on the grapes. The push down thing is to get the juice over the skin so they keep extracting color from the skins. The juice in almost every red grape is not red. It's clear or white or off-white or whatever. So all that color that you get in red wine comes from the skin of the grape and the grape fermenting in the same tank with the skins.
Right. So that prompts me for my fun trivia that we always discuss on our wine tours to wine country, is that rosé is pink and not red or white because it's always made from red wine grapes, and you leave the skins on for 8 to 10 or 12 hours, maybe 18 hours, and you get a little puff.
Or 2 or 3 or 4 hours, depending on the variety.
Or even 2 or 3 or 4. The skins give that color of the red wine grape, which all rosé is made from red wine grapes, and then they take the skins away from the juice, and that's why it's pink. And what Katie is saying about the push down is that it's a way to circulate the red wine juice over the skins so that you're distributing the color that comes from the skins evenly and as effectively as possible.
Correct. Excuse me.
However, I like this, Penny. If you like to stomp grapes, there is a stomping competition each year at the Alexander Valley Vineyards Harvest Party. Well, at least every year except 2020.
Right.
So.
We have a harvest party in the fall. We have an event about once a month for our wine club members and for the public also. And the biggest one, or one of the bigger ones, is the harvest party in the fall. We have a blessing of the grapes. We have grape stomping. We have a bocce tournament. We have all sorts of fun. Big barbecue.
Katie, I'm coming out. You don't understand. Like, I've got like all these wineries from this year. We've been doing the virtual tastings here in New York. I got to visit like a few dozen of you guys. So I'm coming out for the stomping party.
Come out and see us. So the Zinfandel is nice fruit. This is mostly in American oak barrels. Is that right, Penny?
All American.
All American oak barrels for about 14 months. American oak barrels have a little more aggressive flavor and open porousness than the French oak. And I think that marries really well with the fruit and the intensity you get in Zinfandel.
All right, so I'm gonna pivot a little bit on the food pairing question, and for anybody watching, Penny and Katie have not heard. They don't know about this question, but so we're all in this crazy pandemic time, and we've all got our pantry, and we're a lot of cooking at home and a lot of ordering in. So in the context of those kinds of foods that are takeout or pickup foods or pantry foods, let's do these next wines. What would you pair, whether it's Chinese takeout or pizza or what have you, Thai, the Zinfandel, what would you pair in the context of that definition of food? Foods that are easily obtainable now while we're all in lockdown.
Takeout ribs.
Takeout ribs with the Zinfandel. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. mean, it's good with pizza, but it's got to be the right kind of pizza. Pizza with spicy peppers. I had a Hawaiian pizza last week that was amazing with jalapenos. Zin agreed with that.
Well, Norman is having Iberico ham, which is Spanish, I believe, and prosciutto, which is excellent. I think those are great choices as well. I don't know if they're
Norman likes his pork
pandemic.
products, and that's a good thing.
I don't know if they're pandemic foods. those are fancy foods.
They store very well in your pantry for a long, long time.
I guess that's right.
Pork products are always well appreciated. And with Amazon, you can get anything anytime you want. So
exactly, and that's what he recommends. Amazon.com. Awesome. All right. We love Zin. Everyone. There's a few people watching who have tuned in before. They all know that I like Zinfandels. So
great. So to move on to our next.
And lasagna. Dana says lasagna. I think that's a pretty good.
That's very good. Although we may have some competition in the lasagna ring coming up. So I really like this photo because it shows you how different grape varieties can be. Zinfandel's kind of big and fat and juicy. Merlot and Cabernet, both varieties from Bordeaux, have more open bunches, looser bunches, smaller grapes. These all have seeds inside, so you're getting not a lot of juice compared to the amount of seeds and skins that you have with all these wines. So you can tell from this that our next variety is going to be Merlot if you want to get it ready. Berry size does impact flavor profiles, and these smaller berries are going to give you more concentrated fruit flavors. Merlot is my favorite wine that we make. And
that's why you did not get the nod to be in the movie Sideways.
Oh, very correct. I thought Sideways was an absolutely awful movie. And I thought they were a bunch of idiots who knew nothing about what they were talking about. Our first vintage of Merlot, well, we planted Merlot in the early 60s. We had always used it as a blending variety. And then we started producing it on its own in 1984. Very hardy vines. You can see there's a lot of leaf coverage with Merlot. Again, trellis, so you get a lot of airflow through the vines. But the grapes are spread out along that trellising. We've already talked a lot about barrels, but all of our red wines are in barrels for 14 to 28 months. And we usually use our barrels for about 5 years. So we're getting 20% new barrels a year. A barrel that starts out with Merlot in it, Merlot will go into that barrel over the next several years. And this is obviously a shipment of new barrels that's just come in that we're getting ready to get into the winery.
And Katie, I'm sorry, these are French oak?
I can't tell from looking at them here if they're French or American.
Now,
they all look the same from this distance. You're not going to be able to tell much.
But the Merlot that we're about to taste, was it aged in French oak?
Penny, it's half and half.
It's both French and American oak. And the reality is on the barrels that you see there, I think this year about 56% of the new barrels were French and the balance American, and it really does vary.
Most of the barrels, whether they're made from oak grown in France or oak grown in the United States, are made here now. We still buy from a few small producers and directly in France, but many of the barrel producers have facilities here now. They ship over the oak, they produce the barrels here. It's more cost efficient than shipping big barrels.
And now this Merlot that we're about to taste, is it new oak that it's aged in, or is it second and third use oak?
It would be new and second, third, fourth year oak.
Yep.
We use that combination to tone down the new oak flavors. Um, but it will have all of those. We also blend Merlot into our Cabernet, Merlot into our Cyrus, which is our high-end Bordeaux blend. We grow 18 different varieties. We make a lot of other wines besides just these 4. We make a rosé, as you were talking about, out of our Sangiovese grapes. So there's a lot of other, there's a lot of blending going on and a lot of other wines that we have available.
So in brief, this Merlot, the grapes are crushed. The wine, correct me if I'm wrong, is fermented in tanks, and then it's moved to the first of 2 or 3 barrel aging phases, because it'll spend time in different years of oak, right?
Correct. Well, it will be crushed, it will be fermented, then you allow it to settle. You allow the, you press, crushed, fermented, pressed, put back into a tank, allowed to settle where the solids or the proteins fall out of the wine, yeast that's spent from fermentation, that kind of thing. Excuse me, and then it's taken off that, put into barrels. Some of it will be put into new barrels, some into 1-year-old, some into 2-year-old, some into 3-year-old barrels, aged in caves for 14, 15 months, tasted along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the winemaker decides what he's putting into a blend for Cabernet or a blend for a Reserve. We're going to bottle separately as just Merlot. So there's a lot of.
Oh, so once the different segments, if you will, go into new oak, 1-year oak, 2-year oak, 3-year oak, they don't move around into, spend some time in new and then go into 1 year. You then blend from there, from the different segments, if you will, or different lots of.
Correct. You blend it at the end. The winemaker tastes as he's going through. But our winemaker, Kevin Hall, who is wonderful, has been with us since 1998. He knows the lots, he knows the vineyards, he knows the barrels he likes. He pretty much, every vintage is different, but he pretty much knows what direction he's going in with each of the wines and how much he's making.
I think one of the things is with the lots that we pick, he specifies a different oak barrel for different lots because he knows what fruit characteristics those lots may have. So that's when he'll determine if he's going to put that lot into the new oak or that lot into French oak, depending on what characteristic he's trying to accentuate with that. And that's how you get those additional layers of complexity in the glass.
Yeah, and speaking of the glass, I just want to point out to everybody, like this Merlot, I poured my taste 10 plus minutes ago. It's really working nicely in the glass. It's changing even in that short amount of time.
And you can taste that it has good tannin, good structure, nice balance. Again, balance with fruit, alcohol, acid, tannin, and the wood. All those things combined, you don't want any of them standing out too much. So we're looking at a really nice balance here. It's a pretty nicely structured Merlot, so it will stand up to your steak or your prosciutto or spicy food even. I like this with paella when it's made with a lot of spice in it. And so it's a nice cross drinking eating wine.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm getting like a black currant on the nose. Mm-hmm. Really nice. Okay. So I know you just mentioned some foods, but pandemic foods for the Merlot. What's the choice?
Well, last night it was turkey pot pie.
Yeah, but that's because it was 4 days after Thanksgiving.
Homemade turkey pot pie. You can't really talk about pandemic foods anymore. A, because we can all go to the grocery store, and B, because it's been so damn long. Everything you know,
Anything's game.
we're not eating poorly, I have to say. I like it with sausages. A lot of times you're eating with a lot of people and you're not all having the same thing, especially if your kids have moved home to live with you during the pandemic.
Yes, mine have.
Yeah, mine too.
I'm wondering about that, and I'm not sure what happened.
So everything, every night it's a different flavor. But I'd have to say we do take out every Thursday usually. So again, Mexican food, very nice with that. Very nice with that in general.
So I love that you said that. My son is staying with me right now. He's home from college. We ordered like a big order for takeout from Chipotle, and I'm gonna have the Merlot with the Chipotle tonight.
Very good. Excellent. I do think it's really nice with peppers. Probably goes better with something peppery than the Sinzen would, because that's got a little more fruitiness to it. And so, but I'm not going to tell you, everybody likes something different. And
I know, but to Penny's point earlier about the lobster and the Chardonnay, there are certain foods where you combine it with a wine, and it's not like laser, smart bomb accuracy, but you just a good, really good choice. And the combination is magical.
Right.
It's like maybe not life changing, but it's week changing. Like it just makes things better,
Right.
And I think that we did a wine and cheese and charcuterie pairing virtually a couple weeks ago, and we really calibrated certain cheeses with the rosé and with a red blend and a Zinfandel, and man, it was just it just knocked your socks off. How it made the wine better and it made the food better.
Okay, pandemic, this Merlot will rock your meatloaf.
I like it. I'm still going with Chipotle, but
Chipotle is good. We have lots of great Mexican restaurants here, and so we eat that a lot too.
Excellent.
Decadent with a lamb burger too.
I love a lamb burger with it. That's a great choice, Penny.
Yum yum. All right, so to wrap up here, for a last wine. When you're planting a new vineyard, it used to be you'd plant a disease-resistant rootstock, wait for 9 months, graft a grape variety onto it, and get grapes in the 5th year. Now we plant bench grafts, which already grafted the disease-resistant rootstock onto the varietal. And it's a little more expensive. You can also see how close together these vines are planted. That's a newer technique that gives you less fruit per vine, but more fruit per acre. And the individual vines don't produce as much, but you actually end up getting more fruit per acre. And with modern planting techniques, you can pick grapes in the 3rd year after they're planted.
Wow. It used to be you plant a vine, come back 20 years later, right, to get some decent wine.
Well, it was 5 years till you got fruit and 7 years maybe till a full yield, but that's not very efficient. Today, with our large vineyards, we tend to replant about 10, 15, 20 acres a year, so you're never pulling out a huge swath all at once. There's been a lot of advances in vineyard and growing technology and ways to interplant or plant individual vines rather than pulling out a large swath of vineyard.
What's the distance, because we can't tell from the picture, between these vines, because you said they're more closely planted?
Most of ours are maybe 6 by 6, like the rows are 6 feet wide, and the vines might be. These actually look like they're more like 4 feet apart per vine. You have to have the width in the row to be able to get a tractor down it. to disc or do other vineyard work.
I was talking about the distance vertically between vine to vine. I think 4 feet was my guess.
Yeah, I'd say they're probably about 4 feet. It's kind of foreshortened here.
And how many cases in an efficiently planted vineyard like this, how many cases of wine come from 1 acre?
About 80. No. I'm sorry. 5 times that.
5 times. So 400 cases.
Yeah.
Per acre.
And it'll depend on the varietal somewhat.
It depends on the varietal. It depends on the year. You get about 75 cases per ton, maybe 70, depending on what the variety is. And let's just say an average of 5 tons to the acre, sometimes you get 7 or 8 or 9, but in a bad year you get 3. So it's really hard to tell.
Which leads me to Nancy's question, which is how old are your oldest vines? Because your oldest vines are going to produce some extraordinary grapes and wine, but they're going to yield lower amounts. How old are the oldest vines in the vineyards?
Penny, do you know?
Prunes in for the old vines in's over 50.
About 50.
50 years.
Yeah. But one of the questions was how many tons per acre, and I think that's a term that probably shouldn't be used as much anymore, because if you use tons per acre, your next question should be how many vines produce that ton, because you could get a very low ton per acre but have very few vines per acre, and that's one of the things people forget about. They're so used to saying tons per acre, and it's really pounds per vine. Well,
tons per acre is the grape grower talking about,
right,
how he's going to get paid. So
right,
that's a more of a farming term than a winemaking term. This is a picture of pruning being done in the vineyard. We prune by hand. Those canes that shoot up in the vineyard that hold all the grapes get pruned in December, January, and February. And there's some pictures of Cabernet Sauvignon grapes, which lets you know that we're about to taste the Cabernet. Here's some harvesting pictures of hand harvesting with that little curved knife that you can see Isidro has there. This is a picking by hand.
Yeah. And you can see those Cab Sauv grapes are smaller than the Zinfandel grapes.
Yeah, they're smaller. The bunches are very open, which is good. On Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and on Zinfandel, you see the bunches are very tight. So you have much more problems with weather. If it rains when they're ripe and ready to pick, and they're earlier varieties, you have a hard time keeping them dry and keeping air in there. So they tend to you have more problems with mildew or mold. We don't have that very much because it doesn't rain really usually here in that time of year. But you can see the Cabernet very open bunches, and they're a later ripening variety. And that's a great picture of our Cabernet labels, and all our labels really from the years from the first vintage in 1975 through to our current vintage. So we're going to taste Cabernet next.
Now, do you guys sell any library or reserve collections that go way back in years like that?
No, they don't go back this far. Some of our reserve wines we have back to 2012 maybe, but we don't usually have anything much older than that. Alexander Valley is most well known for Cabernet Sauvignon. We obviously can make a lot of other great wines, but it's what we've become most well known for. We make this estate Cabernet. We also make a Cabernet Franc, an organically grown Cabernet Sauvignon, reserve single vineyard Cabernet, and then our Cyrus is our Bordeaux blend, which is Cabernet based, and that's much more expensive. Cabernet in the Alexander Valley, you got some bell pepper, bay leaf, a little bit of mint, a little bit of pepperiness in it in the nose.
Yeah, I was gonna say pepper, and you definitely get the finesse or the smoothness of the Bordeaux style.
Right. Very well balanced again, not tons of heavy tannin. And beautiful nose. American and French oak combination. This is about 90% Cabernet Sauvignon with a little bit of Merlot and Cabernet Franc.
Yeah, I agree, Norman. The fruit notes are really nice in this wine. This is a finesse wine that and then you can tell it's gonna do better and better in the glass and in the decanter as it opens up and it gets some air.
Yeah. The more air it gets, the more it opens up. Definitely improves.
Really cool.
Do we have other questions that didn't get answered?
Yeah, this is the time has flown, which means it's been really fun. Any questions for Katie and Penny, guys, about these wines? Anybody want to nominate their favorite from the floor in the tasting?
This is the steak wine.
This is a steak wine. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say steak sub from the carryout.
I agree, Jeff. Great wines, great winery, super knowledgeable presenter. Doesn't hurt to be, in the family that founded the winery. So Norm says that his favorite was the Merlot and his wife went with the Cab.
Great. That's why we make so many wines.
Yeah. How many wines do you make, Katie?
Well, we probably make, I don't know, a penny. Do we know exactly 20?
Yeah, it ranges vintage to vintage, but around
Vintage to vintage. We have a Alexander School Reserve label that can be 2 or 3 wines of vintage. It's whatever the winemaker wants to make a teeny little bit of. Rosé, Gewürztraminer, several other reds. We do things in different sizes. Magnums, these half bottles, of course. So we have a wine club. We have 3 wine clubs, but we have a wine club reserve that our wine club members actually make every year at one of our events. So I would just say to everybody, this is a beautiful valley. Please come see us if you get to our area. It really is a wonderful agricultural area. That photo is no lie. It's bucolic. There are wineries dotted here and there. The town of Healdsburg is charming and lovely. And it's a great place to grow grapes. It's a great place to grow anything. We have great weather, we have water, we have soil. We all have huge vegetable gardens and flower gardens. We sell at the Healdsburg Farmers Market. It's a great place for food and for wine.
Absolutely. And by the way, you're how, what's the drive from San Francisco?
We are an hour and 20 minutes from the Golden Gate Bridge.
So you fly into SFO, San Francisco Airport, and you make a beeline to Sonoma and you're there.
Yep.
And by the way, this has been so cool, Katie and Penny. You guys are awesome. You're doing amazing work and what you guys do 7 days a week. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that the people who run and wineries and make wine, it's a 24/7 job, and you're doing God's work. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And anybody who wants more information, you guys have the I'll put it up in my background here. You can pretty much get anything we've talked about from the website, avvwine.com. And there are specials. If you use the promo code, Penny, correct me if I'm wrong, NYWE, you can apply that to any purchase you make until December 15th, including full bottles, as opposed to the half bottles.
the wines we tasted tonight, yes.
Of
Of
these
the-
four wines we tasted.
Of these four wines, of these four wines.
It applies to 750s as well as half bottles. And shipping, the shipping's only $5. So and the tax varies depending on where you are and that kind of thing. But we really appreciate you asking us to do this, and we really appreciate having a chance to taste through the wines and talk about them and talk about the winery.
Well, and we appreciate you guys. And frankly, this has been really interesting for me, and I think for the audience, because you guys are a more established brand and winery and a little bit bigger, and the things that you're able to do and the versatility that you have is something that we don't always see. We work with lots of smaller producers on the show, but to see all of the breadth and depth of what Alexander Valley Vineyards can do is eye-opening, and it's really cool.
Well, I think our relationships with our customers, with our distributors, with retailers, with restaurants are what have helped us. We've built those relationships over decades, and that has helped sustain us in this time and will help sustain us going forward. So thank you for
Absolutely.
having us.
Well, thank you for being on the show, and you'll see me next year. I'm coming out.
Yay! Yeah. We want to see you stomp some grapes.
I'm stomping.
Excellent.
All right. Penny, Katie, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you soon on Virtual Day Trip to Wine Country.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Stay safe.